Hi, everybody. I hope you are all doing well today. If my sound is good, can you put a 1, please? Been having trouble with my microphone. I want to make sure that I've got it set right. So if it sounds good, just put a 1 or any number if you're choosing. Okay, I guess I'm not on yet because it shows there's people here. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Oh, hi, Clementine. Thank you, Team Doocy Do. Okay, Michaela, welcome. Nancy Schmidt, hi there. Hey, Blonde PT, welcome. Good to see you. Hi there, Ionica Blonde. Welcome. Okay, so I haven't been on in quite a while. Multiple reasons for that. I've got to be very careful what I say about the Uvalde school shooting. There's reasons for that. So let me just say this. I'm deeply troubled and moved, affected by all that's happened in Uvalde. The information is not getting better the more that we learn. The shooting was on the 24th at Robb Elementary, like the majority of you know, and it was an 18-year-old person who did it. They purchased 2 automatic firearms within 3 days' time and like 500 rounds of ammunition. They still don't know where the ammunition came from, but I think just like in the case of the Parkland shooting in Florida, the shooter was in contact with some people online in Germany, and there was also communications with people on some social media sites where the person had made comments about being a school shooter, and so things are it's a bad situation. So Irma Garcia was one of 2 teachers that was killed at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, and her husband Joe Garcia has now also passed away. He went on the morning of the 26th to her memorial, and then when he got home, he died of a heart attack. So they were married for 24 years. They had 4 children. The oldest was 23, and then all the way down to some older teenagers. Their family is in shock, and they say that he couldn't live without her. They had spent their lives together, and they were incredibly close. Irma and Joe had a really, really great marriage and loved each other very much, and they believed that he did in fact die of a broken heart. So when they found her body, she was actually had her arms around several children, whether it was in comfort or to protect them. But, she died doing what she loved most, living. So the effects of what's happened in Uvalde are not finished yet. And as the situation unfolds and there is more investigation, then there is more and more information that this was a crazy situation, but there were so many mistakes made along the way, and it's hard to wrap your mind around how that could be, right? one of the things that I've found to be very interesting, well, there's a ton that's interesting, but one of the things I haven't really heard anybody say anything about is that the police chief, Peter Arredondo, he is the one ultimately, it's now come out, it's been announced, he's the one ultimately that made the decision and told the cops not to go in. What is so amazing about this is that only 3 weeks ago, he was actually elected to serve on the Uvalde City Council. Is that crazy? So you got this guy who's chief of police for the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District. 3 weeks ago, he was elected to be on the Uvalde City Council, which means he's got to resign his position. Police officer, Texas Public Safety. And he tells them not to go in. Now, one of the questions that I have, and I'm sure a lot of people that are doing the investigation have as well, did he do that because he did not want, he didn't want any lost officers on his watch? The school shooting itself was bad enough to be on his watch, but then had he lost an officer during this thing, then maybe it could have been a double whammy on his political career. It's so hard to say, but cynical. I'm so cynical, and I'm very angry about the whole thing. One of the reasons that I'm cynical and angry about the whole thing is because I've watched video and people have said that his police officers were outside of the school putting handcuffs on parents to stop them from going into the school for them to get any of the kids out. There were parents that were able to go in another direction, sneak into the school without the cops knowing, get some of the kids out. But to see the video of the police, you've got these parents, these grandparents, these brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles. They're screaming at the cops, go in. What are you waiting on? I mean, these guys are dressed out in full gear. They've got Kevlar on. And the parents, the people that love these babies are screaming, you go in there or I'm going to go in there. One of the mothers said, if you don't go in there, I'm about to go in there. The cops pulled out tasers and told the parents that they would tase them if they tried to go into the building. They had parents on the ground fighting with them on the ground, trying to get handcuffs on them. They had other parents with handcuffs on while you could hear the gunshots going off in the school. So there is rumor, and now this has not been confirmed. There is rumor that there was an active shooter drill at Robb Elementary 3 weeks ago. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's just some of these troll kind of people that like to take a horrific situation, and make it worse, if possible, through a broken heart. But nevertheless, if they had an active shooter drill 3 weeks ago, and that turns out to be verified, I did call and ask the question, and I was hung up on with no answer. So it's probably going to take a FOIA request to try to get that information. But if that's the case, then did they plan on not going in? Like, were they told don't go in? It's so hard to understand. Now, I want to say this. I support police officers. Okay. You don't want to live in an area where there's no law. You don't. That's it's anarchy. But I'm struggling to understand how there can be such a massive breakdown in training, response time, humanity, gut instinct, right? So I think that Duty Ron's live, I think he did a really good job talking about the fact that their SWAT team was only part-time, which is a bit hard to believe. But we can say, well, that's a really isolated area, rural area, and they lack training or sophistication or whatever you want to say. But Border Patrol is there, and those are federal agents, and they're highly trained, and they are working their butts off. They're encountering criminal behavior every day. There's active shots being exchanged on the border every day. And ultimately, the guy who ends up saying go to hell goes on in the school and ultimately, gets some kids out and kills, this guy was a Border Patrol. But still, even now on the 28th, there's some curiosity about how the shooting unfolded. So I thought that that's what I would do. And again, please don't get me wrong. I'm not able to talk about, I'm not going to say the shooter's name. I'm not going to show photographs of him. None of that. He can disappear into oblivion as if he were never on this planet, as far as I'm concerned. And I really am restricted from really talking about the children and that sort of thing. So what I can do is I can kind of talk about the peripheral results of the effects of what's happened. And so one of the articles that I found that was so interesting came out yesterday and was Channel 6, and it's an ABC affiliate. And they gave us a timeline, and this is really one I've been looking for a timeline. This was really one of the first ones, well, the only one I've seen so far that's really broken it down into minutes, and then also the weeks and months before it happened. So up until yesterday, this was the most comprehensive timeline that's been given, I think, and I've been looking. But I think in the days to come, I think this will change dramatically. But still now, previously it was just giving you just the days, but now we're really, really getting into what they're willing to release in the investigation. And there's just some points here that we really have to pay attention to, and it's shocking and horrible. So on September 2021, the shooter asked the sister to buy him a gun. She outright says, no way, no how, not happening. No. Now, I know the mother has come out and said, well, he had his reasons. No, he didn't have his reasons. It's beyond reason. There is no reason at all. What he had was mental illness, and very likely he had a unresponsive home. There was probably not a lot of conversation and companionship happening within the home. He was probably living a fairly isolated life. He had a well-known reputation at the school for being aggressive, for being an outcast, just like the Parkland shooter. But our political correctness to a point in our culture that we're overlooking potential or likely dangerous people because people are too afraid of being called a name or being told that you're heartless, or how dare you point out that something may be different, or whatever. No. We're not talking about different. We're talking about kids or young adults with a very specific set of behaviors that are warning flags of impending doom. And we know what it is. And you're foolish to turn your back on these young people. There was one kid that I can remember. We had our specific, as a teacher, we had our specific places we had to stand, like when we were on duty in the hall or on playground or lunchroom or whatever. And each person had their own specific area that they stood. There was this one kid, it's a 14-year-old kid. This one kid had 2 teachers assigned to watch one kid because he had all the red flags. And lo and behold, about 3 or 4 years after I left that school, he ended up murdering one of my students, one of my, straight A students. He ended up murdering her and burying her, and she was declared missing for a couple of years. And then finally, there'd been another kid who had watched him bury her, and he finally got the courage and told where she was and who did it. And he is on death row now. We know who those kids are. We know who to watch. They knew in Parkland. They knew. And now here we have another one who had a reputation. People were afraid of him. So, and he's asking his sister for a gun. So whether he was in any kind of counseling or any kind of adjudication program, we don't know yet, and may not ever. Well, we might know because he's 18 now. Someone may spill the beans, but we don't know now. So September 21st, it's already in his head, right? And there were 2 teenagers that were arrested. Maybe a year or 2 ago. I'll have to look it up and see. And they actually were planning a mass casualty event. So it was a big deal because everybody said, oh, the Uvalde police foiled mass casualty. It was in the newspapers, but is that where this guy got his idea from? I don't know. But in September 2021, he asked his sister for the gun. She said no. And then on February the 28th of this year, on Instagram, the shooter is talking to people, posting on Instagram about being a school shooter, becoming a shooter, being famous from that type of thing. And then on March the 1st, Ramos follows up then talking about buying a gun. So on the 28th, he's talking about being a school shooter. And then the very next day, same group, he's talking about getting a gun. Well, did anybody call the FBI? We know in Florida, they did call the FBI multiple times. Nobody was home. They didn't care. They didn't listen. So it's going to be very interesting to listen and see if anybody called based on this kid. He's on Instagram. He's on Facebook. He's having open conversations about being a shooter and as well as purchasing a gun. On March the 3rd, again, in this group of 4 people, a kid says to him, hey, word on the street is that you're buying a gun. And the shooter says, just bought one right now. Just got it. That was on March the 3rd. On March the 14th, on an Instagram post by the shooter is 10 more days. And then one of the users said, are you going to go shoot up a school or something? And the shooter says, no, stop asking dumb questions. You'll see. And then nothing happens in April. They move into May. And on May the 9th, he befriends a young girl in Germany named Cece. They were using a social media app called Yubo. It's like a dating thing for teenagers. And so they begin this conversation and they actually exchange cell phone numbers. And apparently Cece contacted ABC News and told them who she was and that she was the girl. And then 7 days later, on May the 16th, the shooter turns 18 years old. On the 17th, he buys a semi-automatic rifle at a sporting goods store called Oasis Outback. Now, I'm seeing a lot of people saying, oh, we live in a country where, a kid can walk in and buy an automatic weapon. And okay, it's not an automatic weapon. It's illegal in the United States. We can't purchase automatic weapons. It's a semi-automatic. And the fact that this kid has been showing interest for almost a year in purchasing a gun, and then he can't wait to get one the moment that he turns 18, and he buys 375 rounds when he purchases a semi-automatic weapon, I think someone should have stopped and said, this weird. What's happening? So it's that again is going to be a very interesting thing to watch for in the days that come. Is, did Oasis Outback take any steps to say, hey, we got an 18-year-old kid, just turned 18-year-old, nobody's with him, there's no parent with him, and not only is he buying, a semi-automatic rifle, but he's buying 375 rounds, and the kid looks like he's fairly well poverty-stricken, so maybe somebody needs to come talk to him. And then if that wasn't enough of a red flag, 3 days later, he goes into the same sporting goods store and buys another semi-automatic weapon with additional ammunition. So you got a kid who turns 18 years old on the 16th, and within 4 days, he has 2 semi-automatic rifles, more than 500 rounds of ammunition, and he's not a hunter. Did someone stop and go, hey, maybe we could check his school records? Maybe we should get in touch with the doctor's office and see what the mental health is like. Because if you're a healthcare provider, when we do our clinical interview and intake, and this goes for cardiologists, general practitioners, psychologists, psychiatrists, anybody, when you do your intake on a new patient or a yearly update, we ask about firearms. Are there firearms in the home? Certain mental illnesses, certain medications may give you pause to put a note about that in the notes. So I think this was a big enough of a red flag that it could have triggered an investigation, right? So May the 20th, he bought the second AR-15 at the Oasis Outback. And then May the 24th, which was another 4 days later, Tuesday morning, there's an Instagram account that tells someone on social media, they believe it was the shooter, tells someone on social media or takes a photograph of a gun that's lying on a bed and makes some comments that the person thinks, oh, is this guy bragging about a school shooter? At 11 a.m., same day, he sends a text message to Cece, the girl that's in Germany, and says that he is about to do something to his grandmother. And then and what he actually does is he confronts his grandmother, shoots her in the face, and then he takes her car and he leaves with the guns and the ammunition. She didn't die. She manages to get across the street to a neighbor's house where they call a cop, and she's life flighted to the hospital. She's currently in stable condition, thank goodness. So right there at 11 o'clock, this is the first notification to the cops of, we got a crazy person on the loose. Why is that? Because it's a gunshot wound. And so the very minute that 911 or the paramedics, the very second that they see gunshot wound, they're on the phone to the police saying, hey, we got a gunshot wound. And that should have been, all points. Everybody should have been out at that point knowing, hey, we got a problem. So the grandmother where the shooter lived did not live far from Robb Elementary. And it's a little bit confusing, but by 11:27, there is a Robb Elementary teacher who goes out of a west-facing exterior door and he props it open. Well, I don't know. $11:28, the shooter crashes his vehicle into this big old ditch that was near to the next to the property of the elementary school. It's a little bit a ways from the school, maybe 100, no, not quite 100 yards. Maybe it's 60 yards. So a little bit away from the building, but adjacent to the building. And he climbs out of the passenger side of the car, and he has this AR-15 semi-automatic rifle. He had a backpack on that was containing his ammunition and gear, including an ammunition vest. He had no Kevlar, no protective fabric. The law enforcement said Ramos had a total of 7 30-round magazines with him in the classroom where the killings took place. He had 15 additional loaded magazines in his backpack. After exiting the vehicle, Ramos fired at 2 nearby witnesses that were at a funeral home, and then he turns and begins to make his way toward the school. It's 11:28. So the door is propped open at 11:27. 11:28, he crashes into the ravine, dozens of yards from the school. 11:28, he comes out of the vehicle. He fires 2 shots at the local funeral home. There were people at the funeral home. He fired shots at them. And then by 11:30, he's, making his way to the school. So at 11:30, so I don't know where the guy went. He props the door open, goes back in the school. The shooter runs in through the door, and then the teacher reemerges through the same door and calls 911 to say, hey, there's a guy with a gun nearby. So at 11:30, the U.S. Marshals receive a call from the police department saying, we have an active shooter at Robb Elementary School. Will you help us? So by 11:31, oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm wrong. He didn't get into the school yet. They made the phone call before he ever got into the school. At 11:31, Ramos jumps one fence and approaches the school. So he first had the exchange with the funeral home. And then they're calling at the school. The guy that opens the door calls the police department. The police department calls the marshal, and then he's beginning at 11:30. That's so odd, isn't it? Like, why didn't he shut the door back? So he's firing multiple rounds at 11:31 into the school building. Contrary to previous reporting, the shooter does not encounter any officers outside of the building. Police vehicles are arriving on the scene at the funeral home at 11:31, and 11:31 is the same time the shooter is moving onto the school building. It's crazy. A Uvalde officer who is not on the campus does hear the 911 call and immediately drives to the area. The ISD officer approaches a person he believes to be the suspect, but in fact, it is the teacher that propped open the door. Because he was focused on the teacher, he went right past the shooter, who was crouching down behind some parked cars. The shooter at 11:32, the shooter fires multiple rounds into the outside of the building. And finally at 11:33, he enters through the door that was propped open by the teacher, who called the police. So how does he call the police at 11:28 and not close the door? Like, the door was open for 5 minutes after he called the police. It was so odd. So at 11:33, the shooter enters Robb Elementary through the west entrance, the one that was propped open. He walks 20 or 30 feet straight into the building, and then he turns right, just like he knew exactly where he was going. He walked another 20 feet, and he turned directly left into the classroom that was on his left. That's at 11:33. The police are contacted at 11:28. There are shots fired right across the street at the funeral home 5 minutes before this guy ever walks in to the classroom. Where are the cops, right? So at 11:33, he goes into the classroom was 111/112. There were doors that connected the rooms. He walks in. He immediately fires off 100 rounds at the students. At 11:35. 3 police officers arrive and enter the school through the same entrance used by the shooter. I guess it's still propped open. So, where's the teacher? You got 2 minutes. This guy walks in at 11:33. He fires off 100 rounds. And then it's 2 minutes later that the cops go through the door. Why didn't the teacher close the door? I just don't understand the timeline. It's very odd. If you're a conspiracy theorist, you could go crazy with this. What is the deal with the open door and the teacher who's just hanging around while shots are being fired? So a total of 7 officers are now in the school. The officers are fired on. 2 officers sustained grazing wounds. And because he's now in schoolroom 112, shooting through the door out into the hallway. From 11:37 to 11:44, the shooter is firing at intervals. He's shooting for 15, 17 minutes, just shooting. And the cops are there. They're in the building. So they start out with 3 officers. Then that builds up to 7 officers. At 11:43, Robb Elementary posts a Facebook message that says, we're under lockdown due to gunshots in the area. At 11:51, The police sergeant and additional officers arrive on the scene. I guess that's when they begin to arrest parents. At 11:55, onlookers gather outside the school, growing more restless, and they encourage the officers to enter the building. I'm going to say encourage is probably too soft of a word. I would say they demanded. They were frantic. They were terrified. They were furious. They didn't request. They were demanding. And the police respond by throwing parents on the ground, trying to tase them, and actually handcuffing some of them. Crazy. Remember, you're still getting gunshots going off in the school that is full of little kids. And now there's plenty of police officers there. At 12:03, more officers arrive on scene and enter the building. There are now, at 12:03, 19 police officers inside the school. At 12:03. A 911 caller whispers that she is inside room 112. She is on the phone for 1 minute and 23 seconds. At 12:10, the deputy U.S. Marshal from Del Rio, which is 70 miles away, arrives. This guy is able to drive 70 miles and the 19 officers in that school building, and nobody went into room 112. You got a little girl alive at 12:03 calling the police. At 12:10, the same 911 caller calls back again and says, I'm in room 112. There are several people here that are dead. Please come. 12:13, the 911 caller inside room 112 calls again. When are you coming? He's still killing us. 12:15, the U.S. Border Patrol Tactical Unit arrives on scene with shields and other equipment. At 12:15, the caller inside of room 112 calls back to report that now 8 or 9 kids are still alive. Like, how many? They're saying we still got living children here. And right across the wall are 19 police officers. And how many of those kids were on the ground that may have been alive but bleeding, that could have been saved? At 12:17, the school district then gets on Twitter. So first we get on Facebook, now we get on Twitter so we can make all of our announcements. 19 police officers in the school. We've got living children in room 111, 112. The same kid keeps calling and begging for help, and nobody is going into the room to help. On one side of the room is a blanket full of windows that they could have breached. 12:21, the shooter fires again at the classroom door, forcing officers in the building to reposition themselves down the hallway to get away from the door. The 911 caller again calls back and says 3 gunshots are overheard. While they're on the phone, they can hear 3 more gunshots in the background as they're on the phone with the kid. 10 minutes later, scanner traffic calls on. Additional firemen need to respond to Mill Street to establish a perimeter to assist Uvalde EMS and Uvalde PD. (12:36), the initial 911 caller, described as a student, calls back and is told to stay on the line and be quiet. The caller says he shot at the door, and the call lasts 21 seconds. The night at 12:46, the caller inside room 12 says she can hear police officers next door. 12:47, she asks again for police to be sent in. 12:50, officers breach the classroom door using a set of keys gotten from the school janitor. They come in the room and they kill the shooter. He entered the building 33. He was in the building for an hour and 20 minutes. I don't know. Ultimately, it was Border Patrol that did what they did. When the federal agents began to arrive, the chief of police, Arrendondo, told them to stand down and not to go in. And they basically said, sorry, we're going in. And they did. And after they got some keys, because we can't break any doors, they're expensive. You got to go to Lowe's and, a new lock and it's too much, too expensive. We got to wait. You got a caller saying, we have live kids here with me. I can't justify it. I can 100% respect that it's a rural area. Maybe they lack training, or you're in shock for a bit. Certainly, I can't accept an hour and 20 minutes. I can't accept that a guy 70 miles away arrives on scene and goes in the building. I can't accept an open door that stayed open more than 5 minutes, allowing the shooter to finish shooting at the funeral home, come across the property and walk right in the door, and then turn right and go 20 or 30 feet, and then go another 20 feet and turn left into the chosen schoolroom. I can't understand that. I don't understand this. So, there again, this is another, this is like a political hot potato, right? And it's a political hot potato on a couple of different levels. It's the whole gun thing is, your constitutional rights for protection and whatnot. That's a political ticking time bomb. The fight for and the fight against police officers is another, hot potato political issue. I'm disgusted at the people that rushed, but before there was even any awareness for how this thing unfolded and all that took place. The rush of people coming out to pick up their side of the political football. I was horrified. Because there's so many people that are in grief and mourning and outrage. What about if you're a police officer? How do you make sense of what these police officers did? How do you make sense of it? So this guy, Peter Arredondo, it seems so much of it seems to originate from him. And to find out that only 3 weeks earlier he was elected to the city council, we're essentially dealing with a politician. So help me understand why this politician didn't want police officers going into that school to intervene. when maybe we would only have had 1 or 2 dead kids. Not that any are acceptable, they're not. But how, I mean, those kids that were in those 2 classrooms, they were just in the killing fields. They were just there. There was no way. There was nowhere to go. But right outside the door were 19 officers. Once they got a key, they opened the door, went in and killed the guy. Why didn't they just knock it down? Don't they serve no-knock warrants? Don't they bust doors down, going into people's houses, and they have the proper authority from a judge? So you're going to tell me they couldn't do that to get to these children? I don't understand it. I don't understand. I hope that the teacher that propped the door open, I hope that teacher is still in the jailhouse getting questioned. Still. And some of you may go, oh my God, how could you say that? Why would you say that again? Because I've been in the school systems, because I know how they are about the rules. You don't go out of a locked door. You damn sure don't leave it open. You don't do it. Where were the officers that were supposed to be there at the school? Where were they? Where did they go? It's a very confusing set of circumstances. Very confusing. But I think it is. I think rather than letting people jump to their political platform, get behind whatever their political belief is, I think you're better off to ask for immediate answers about that day, right? I think the federal argument about gun control and the cultural demands of the role of the police, all of that is coming. And I mean, it's coming. But don't you think that this situation is just evil? It's so confusing. There's so much that is confusing. Don't you think that rather than just going over it and not pinpointing the exact things that went wrong and why and who's to be held responsible, don't you think that we're better off to find out what went wrong so that the proper training or response or jail time is done in the case of those 22 people that died? They mattered. And there should be some accountability. Someone should understand why this guy propped the door open and left it open. Even when there were gunshots across the street, why didn't he run and go close that door? It's so confusing. It's so confusing. So, that is really, I'm going to limit myself. I'm not going to talk more about the situation. I have some, restrictions. So, but I would just caution everybody to hang on and let's demand accountability. Let's demand that the locals, the chief of police, this Arrendondo fella, the teacher that opened up the door, the school official, let's hold them, take them to task, hold them responsibility, and demand answers in the short term for the people, the families that lost their babies and their wife. We had 2 teachers that were killed, murdered. We have to do that. They didn't do that at Parkland. It went straight from the horrific nightmare of the day to the big stage of gun control and everybody, the political stars that were born we can't, that doesn't get you answers. That doesn't get you, you don't pinpoint what actually went wrong. Like already we know in just a few days time, already we know that the guy was trouble. They already, they knew that people were afraid of him. And, you know, just like with Parkland, you know, people were like, oh, I bet it was him. I bet it was, you know, XYZ. I bet he was the one that did it. He's a creeper. We really have to do better. We really do. You're not, we're a country. There are so many guns out there that you can't imagine how many people have the firearms of their parents, their grandparents. There's so many. Even if you started registering guns 5 years ago, there would still be so many guns out there that would be unregistered. We have a lot of hunters in our country. It's a sport. People do skeet shooting. High schools have shooting competition with the students. People have owned guns in this country forever and not had the kinds of shootings that we're having now. You can't just jump and say it's the inanimate object that's doing this. No, it's the person holding it. When the guy got in the car on Christmas and ran over the Christmas parade, people were not saying we got to outlaw trucks. That's silly. But you certainly should be, if you're given a driver's license to someone, you should certainly find out if they're able to drive. You better find out if they have visions of killing people with their car. It's my passion is for understanding the police response. Because they're carrying their firearms legally. Why didn't somebody go in and help them? Why didn't somebody go around to the window and take the guy out sniper style? There's so many questions. Why was the door propped open and left open for so long, even when you got a shooter at the funeral home for 5 minutes? Why? It's so hard to believe. And it was only once the federal agents, who were not even supposed to be there, they were from 70 miles away. Why is it that it didn't end until people from 70 miles away got on the scene? Why? I don't know. It's heartbreaking, right? It's heartbreaking. So on top of the devastation of the parents and the people that love these babies in Uvalde, every time there is a new school shooting, it simply triggers the trauma from all the other shootings that have happened, starting with Columbine forward. The nation is definitely in grief. People are horribly affected. You know, I guess that I can't remember this much shared grief, I guess, since Sandy Hook, maybe. Duty Ron said, you know, he felt a lot like he felt on 9/11. It's just so senseless and confusing. So I disagree with the family of the shooter who said, you know, please forgive him. He had his reasons. No, he's 18 years old. Those were fourth graders. No, there was no reason. Just insanity. That's all it was. It was just insanity. And he had been trying since he was 21. I'm sorry, since February 2021. He'd been trying to get a gun. And I think he would have done it then if he had been able to get somebody to buy him a gun. So I think if you have somebody that comes in, they've just turned 18, they buy an AR-15, they come in 3 days later and buy another one, they have over 500 rounds of ammunition, I think that ought to trigger a red flag. I think that ought to be an automatic visit from the FBI, don't you? Or quite simply, have a time frame. If you're between ages 18, 21, you buy a firearm and then you can't buy another one for a year, right? It was a huge red flag. 2 AR-15s, 500 rounds the day after his 18th birthday. Where the hell to get the money? Uvalde is not a rich place. Where did he get the money? It's just awful. Where did he get the money? Nobody's answering that. People just want to scream and yell about, cops are evil. You gotta quit selling guns. Can we ask some real questions that there might be answers to, instead of just like this theoretical political argument that's probably going nowhere? Let's ask some real questions. Where did he get the money to buy 2 AR-15s, 500 rounds in 3 days' time? Where did he get the money? Where did he get the skills to load it and unload it and shoot it? Where did he learn that? I don't know. All right. I'm going to read a few questions and then we'll be done. I agree in a sense, but they want us where we can't protect ourselves. Just quit repeating yourself. We saw your message. I don't know who. Oh, United. It's United. United We Stand says the number 19 holds a great significance in Trump circles. The biggest, of course, COVID-19. Well, COVID-19 was because it was 2019 when the virus emerged. So the 19 stands for the year 2019. Those children were sacrificed in an unholy ritual for Trump's NRA visit. Hi, Teresa Fountain. Things should have changed way back when this happened in Columbine shooting. Critter says pure mental illness. I totally agree. So there is often a question about the AR-15s and why people should be allowed to own. You have to realize. Okay, it's easy. Let me say it this way. It's easy to take a position on a matter that you don't have any skin in the game, right? So if you're not a hunter, or if you're not a skeet shooter, if you're not a gun collector, any of those types of hobbies or whatever, I lived in an area of the country where people wait for deer season because they shoot a couple of deer and that's what they eat all year long. That's what their family, and they have big gardens and they grow their own vegetables and they make their own pickles and ketchup and salsa. And they're living essentially off the land. They're growing their own vegetables. They're getting meat from the deer. They only kill what they can need to feed their kids and their family. And then you have hunters like Donald Trump Jr., who goes like big game hunting. You have people like Barry Morphew that, enjoys trophy hunting, looking for the big racks, that kind of thing. But still, regardless of whether you're food or you're hunting, for the trophy stuff, which is what I don't like. It really bothers me to kill something just because you want its majesty. Why not just leave its majesty alive, right? So, but anyway, I'm not here to take a political stand. regardless, these are people that um, this is their way of life, right? And then there's others of us that would never even imagine, going hunting, shooting an animal. We eat plenty of animals. I love fish, but we just wouldn't do it. So it's very easy for us, to come up with a really strong opinion about gun control. I also lived in Egypt for a long time. In Egypt, it's against the law to have a firearm. But guess who has the firearms? The terrorists. They have homemade weapons. And who do they use it on? The citizens that are law-abiding citizens that don't have guns. That's going on today. So, I mean, it's one of the reasons there was a period of time that you couldn't go to the pyramids, because you'd have a bus full of tourists and all these people would jump out. Egyptians would jump out with homemade firearms or smuggled firearms and shoot up the bus and then steal money or whatever. So I also recognize this point of view that, we're our government. We're a different type of country. We were established because we were leaving tyranny. We wanted, when we came to the New World, we wanted a nice civilization where the government would never be able to tell us how to worship, supposedly not take our tax money. And so that was the beginning. That was the foundation. Through the years, of course, it's morphed and it's changed with each successive Congress, new laws that have been passed and whatnot. But ultimately, at the core, what our genetic endowment, we are the children of those people that got on those small boats and crossed the Atlantic Ocean and survived, and to face a wild country, to try to live a life of freedom, And so a lot of people over-identify. I'm not going to say over-identify because that's kind of demeaning. A lot of people with that view, and they are convinced that it's our ability to have private ownership, to be of firearms, to be able to protect ourselves, that keeps us safe from a government type takeover, from a hostile government being able to enact laws that will harm the individual citizen. I don't think about it in terms of these big global problems, but I do think about if you take guns away from law-abiding citizens, people are still going to have guns, but they're going to be the criminals. That is true. It's human nature. They're not gonna go, oh gosh, I gotta quit being a criminal. Really? But I like being a criminal. That isn't gonna happen. I mean, we all know that's not gonna happen. So I do support private gun ownership. And I also think we've got to do something. I think that you have to be a moron not to look at this kid, this shooter, come in the day after his birthday, buy an AR-15 and 300 rounds, and think, oh, well, maybe he's going fishing. Or I'm sorry, not fishing. I looked and there was a fish jumped out of the water at the same time I looked out. Maybe he's going hunting. Maybe he's just being a gun owner in USA, maybe, But when he shows back up at your shop 3 days later with another AR and more ammunition, and he has the money for it, FBI should have gotten a phone call. I believe that in my heart of hearts. And there are many of you guys out there that will go, oh my God, I can't believe you're saying this. He didn't break the law. I understand that. But that pattern of behavior is very concerning. And don't forget, this wasn't, a straight A kid bound for college either. This was a kid that was known in the community to be very troubled and violent. He was aggressive. So, yes, there damn well should have been a phone call to the FBI. I believe it in my heart and soul. And I would support that kind of legislation, to something like that. Something that would trigger an automatic, response like that. I would, like I said, I've already said, that teacher that propped that door open, that sucker would still be being questioned right now today. If I had to find a way to arrest him, I would arrest him until I was satisfied and happy with the ridiculousness of opening that door, leaving it open, knowing that there's a shooter right across the street, and never making a move to close the door. He was there. We know he was there because one of the cops says he was there. He thought he was the shooter. It's terrible. Yeah, the money is a big question, Ms. BB. I agree. I couldn't even kill the mole. Where is it? I'm sorry. I was reading a comment and I can't find it now. The government police just allowed all these children to die, and people want only the people who failed the kids to have guns. Oh, wait a minute. What? The government police allowed the kids to die, and people want only the police to have the guns, because the police are what failed. Okay, I get what you're saying, Alessia. The police failed the children. Agreed. Oh my God. I'm 100% with you. And I want to clarify as well. It's not all police. Not all police failed the children. The Uvalde police, the 19 that were there as 19 children and 2 adults, were killed, murdered. They were murdered. Let's use the proper vocabulary. They were murdered, slaughtered, massacred. Those 19 plus Peter Arredondo failed those children. I'm with you, Alessia. You will not find me among the crowd who says only police should have firearms. I'll never be in that crowd. And the reason is just what I said about my time living in Egypt. Even though with a gun in Egypt, you could get a life imprisonment, people were getting shot all the time by the criminals. So, but the citizen was just a sitting duck. There was no help anywhere. So it's trust me, it hurts my soul, truly. And you guys know, if y'all are on my Twitter and whatnot, you know that I'm putting stuff up about, Blue Lives Matter and, hold the blue line. And I support police officers 100%. Not after this. Now I'm at like 95%. If you're a police officer, you are tasked with protecting your people in your community or your county or your state. That is your mission. That is your job. And even if you're, if you're just one guy or one woman, and you and your gun are the only between a little kid and a school shooter, then you take your chances. I can't believe that there's a single police officer out there that got their badge kind of going, oh yeah, it's not a dangerous job. I'm totally safe. Every police officer I know their husbands or wives, depending on if they're male or female officers, every one of them, every time their spouse leaves to go to work, they hug each other and they kiss like it would be the last time they see them. Every one of them. I mean, we're close to Houston. Houston has become like a mini Chicago. So are you really going to tell me? Make it make sense. Why do we have dozens of police officers in a school allowing little children to be picked off one by one by a madman on the other side of the wall? There's 19 of you. Why didn't you break down the windows and go through? Why didn't you break down the door and go in? Why? But you know what? Instead of the wise among us, the academics, the level-headed, calm, rational among us, instead of asking these questions, where did he get the money? Why didn't somebody go through the windows? How come you didn't just break the door down? Who the hell is the guy that opened the door up? Why didn't he close the door when the shooting was happening over at the funeral home? You have all, instead of asking all of these questions that are necessary to know and understand, they immediately jump up and start screaming and yelling about, oh, it's time for gun control. It's time for gun control. It's time for gun control. No, it's time to understand those 19 police officers. And it hurts my soul to talk bad about the cops. I can promise you that. It's time to understand that those 19. It's time to understand what the hell Peter Arredondo was doing as a newly elected city councilman, Mr. Politician, tried to stop federal agents from going in that building. Thank God they didn't listen to him. Thank God they didn't listen to him. Who's Peter Arredondo? I got questions. You know what I mean? And Cece. Who the hell is Cece? The 4 people that the shooter is in the Instagram chat talking to. Who are these people that knew before it happened that this guy was a loose cannon, was talking about being a school shooter? Who are they? We got a telephone call to 911. We got a woman being life flighted with a gunshot wound to her face. Why weren't people already on alert? Why did it take so long for somebody to get to the school, even the first person? I got questions. I got questions. Teacher, open door to get the cell phone. This is against school protocols. You do not open doors and prop them open. You must report to the front desk that you're leaving and go through the front door. Absolutely, Nancy Drew. And the doors must remain locked and closed so that you know who is on the campus at any given moment, correct? And exactly, United We Stand, as if this whole situation is not horrifying enough. All just the actions of the shooter, Peter Arredondo, and the teacher that propped the door open, as if it's not bad enough. What in the hell would the videos of these police officers that were not in the building, but were out by the buses and out in the perimeter of the school, that were rolling parents around in the dirt, putting handcuffs on them? What the hell? That's not even the original 19 officers that were in the school. They were threatening the adults that were tasked with protecting their children. They were threatening to tase them if they went in the school. We can't let this go. You know what I mean? We can't is my opinion, and I've spent several days studying this and thinking and listening and talking to people and watching. And here's the path that they want to take. They want this massacre, and then they want this to fire up this big political conversation about federal gun control. And what do? We bury 22 human beings with no accountability. I say no. I say we make them get the answers. And then we'll have the big fight and the big, political, Sure. But federally, I don't give a damn right now. I want to know what happened in that community. I want to know what the politician, Peter Arredondo, had to do with what went on. I want to know if there was really an active shooter drill 3 weeks ago in that school. I got a lot of questions. Nancy, the door was propped open before the shooting started. Oh, I'm with you, Alicia. Oh, totally. Totally. Oh, it is horrific, Diamond Paw. Imagine this child, this little girl. She's in a classroom surrounded by her dead classmates and dead teacher, and she has the presence of mind to sneak the teacher's cell phone. The kids talk about hiding underneath kids that have already been shot and making the phone call as the shooter is in the classroom with you or in the classroom next door. Because remember, it had an adjoining door. And so he was going from 111 to 112 to 111 to 112, 111 to 112. And these babies were calling and saying, please come now. Please, when are you coming? One child called like 11 times. That wasn't all that was called. Many other people called, but this was one little girl in 112 calling. There was one that was in 111 that was calling. It's when that mother said he had his reasons, forgive him, he had his reasons. I said, no, there is no forgiveness, not right now. And that is absurd that you have the audacity to say that he had reasons. There is no reason. It is just crazy. It is nothing but crazy. One student played dead and survived. There are many illegal guns. Gang members have that. Sure, there are, Nancy. And you got guns coming from all over the place. There's guns from South America up through Central America, Mexico. They're all over the place. Remember, the FBI was part of setting up the guns in the original 911. I don't know about that. Hi, Just Jax. Welcome. I can't even imagine the trauma these poor babies will live with the rest of their lives. The children that were in the school, the teachers that were there, the parents that were outside fighting to get in the school. I just can't. I'm the community is devastated. It's not a big town. It's not a lot of people there. To lose 22 people is huge. And by the way, when you see people that say that there were 23, what a shame to lose 23 people. No, one of those is a shooter. He got just what he deserved, and I hope he's in hell. So there were 22 lost. I don't know, Diamond Paw. I don't know. Practically every teacher in the school where I work owns a firearm, but they are not allowed on school grounds. And you know, Sherlock Holmes, here's what I don't understand. There have been people want gun control and they're asking for these interventions or whatnot. But then when you suggest, why don't you have teachers qualify to have guns in their classroom, but make them go through a gun safety training? Let there be specific types of locks on the gun. You know, only one person knows how to get in them. And people just refuse that conversation. It's just like, oh my God, horrific. No, can you imagine if one of those teachers had been trained? I don't know. Can y'all still hear me? Put a 1 if you can still hear me. I think YouTube just cut me off. I am so sick about this. It seems we've learned almost nothing since Columbine. It is terrible, Allie. I'm beside myself. That's right, Alessia. Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, the fact that he was over, shooting at the funeral home. And remember, the funeral home, those were not the first shots. The first shot was with the grandma, and the grandma went across the street and they called 911. As soon as EMTs saw a gunshot wound, they were bound at that point by law. They had to contact the police and say, we have a gunshot wound injury. So there was a lot going on that day. And it's just absurd to say, well, we were shocked. We just weren't prepared. Really? You had 30 minutes notice before the guy ever got there to the school grounds, and you were still in shock? It's crazy. It's crazy. Well, miraculously, please, at 11:28, a teacher opened up a door and propped it open. Just propped it open and left it open for more than 5 minutes while the guy was shooting at the funeral home. The teacher didn't go, oh gosh, listen, I think I hear gunshot. I think I better close that door and make sure it's locked. Just left it open. And he walked straight to the room, knew exactly where he was going. He walked in the door. He went 20 feet. He turned right. He went 20 more feet. And then he entered room 111 or 112 to his left. Like, was it planned? How do you enter a building and walk to go to a certain classroom, passing up other classrooms? I don't know, Al. Absolutely murdered. Yes. It's terrible. Well, and that's what I said, Sherlock Holmes. If I was in charge, the teacher would be under the jailhouse right now and wouldn't be allowed to leave until FBI and everybody else had questioned them. I wouldn't tolerate letting that person go for nothing. I know, right, Erica? I'm with you. Absolutely. Hey, Floor. Any connection between the shooter and the teacher? Oh, I don't know. I don't have any idea. I would find that really hard to believe because shooter had just turned 18 years old, very poor. I just don't know how there would. I don't know. But exactly, it's in many ways it's just like Nicholas Cruz, connections to Germany, talking to people online about guns and military equipment. making this announcement of what they're going to be doing with their gun. Some people already said he was a time bomb waiting to go off. It's a lot of similarities between the two. A lot of similarities. Erica, it's funny that you say that. So my family, and I make jokes and laugh about me being a conspiracy theorist. It's fun, right? It's a lot like reading a mystery novel kind of thing, but it's kind of living, it's happening and unfolding. I don't ever buy into it. At the end of the day, when push comes to shove, I'm always with the official line. But you think about, there's bases on the moon, or those are fun kind of things to think about. But it's getting to a point now where it's getting harder and harder to think this is BS. These are crazy people saying this. They don't know what they're talking about. It's getting harder to do that. How did the shooter know the door was open? I live in a small town. Everyone knows everyone. Most don't lock doors. School is less than 100 from K-12, and it's always locked. That is actually, Lisa James, that is one of the questions that I have. I was a teacher for many, many years, and we knew the protocol. You never go out of the side doors. You never unlock one of these doors. You've got to control who's on the campus. You've got to know who's coming and moving through your hallways. If there is an active shooter, you lock the door, you turn the lights off, and then you get all the kids into an area of the room where nobody can see you through a window or anything like that. So why would a teacher leave a door propped open when there is warning? Remember, he was shooting at the funeral home for several minutes before he ever turned and started toward the school. Why didn't that teacher run for that door and yank it closed? I mean, immediately. But they didn't. And in fact, the teacher stayed outside because one of the first responding officers saw the teacher thinking that was the shooter. It's weird. It is just crazy. I don't know. But what I don't want to have happen, what I don't want to see happen, is I don't want to see them push and jump immediately into this big fight, political, federal fight about gun rights and whatnot. I don't want to see them to do that, because what happens as soon as those conversations begin, the investigation into the actual crime stops. It comes to a screeching halt. You got a creepy politician involved here. This Peter Arredondo is a creeper. He gets elected to city council 3 weeks ago. At the same time, they're doing an active shooter drill at the elementary school. And now on the very day, they get an active shooter, and he tells his officers, don't do anything, and tried to stop the federal officers. That is highly questionable. Someone needs to get down to brass tacks and say, explain it. Hold someone accountable for those 22 lives. You got it. That's the starting point, is someone's got to be held accountable for those lost babies and those two women that tried to protect and comfort those children. Somebody's got to be held accountable. Not cheap words from some congressman or president or what. No. I'm talking about real. Understand what happened. Diane, we can't let the investigation drop. That is, we have to hold their feet to the fire. We have to keep them focused on that school, focused on that shooter, focused on that politician, Arredondo, and get some answers. Find out who that teacher was. Find out why that teacher opened that door and left it open. Find out. Find out who those 19 cops were that had babies calling them saying, please come in and help us, and stood on the other side of the wall. Grown men, 19 of them, and did not go in when there were living children in that room. I'm sorry. I'm really angry about this. And we can't forget the teacher, Joe, her husband died with the day they did her memorial. It's devastating. Those 4 kids lost both their mom and their dad. There's so much destruction, and it will be a travesty to just drift away from the crime so that we can have once again this stupid political conversation that's not going to go anywhere, because it is a constitutionally protected right in the United States that we be able to own firearms and protect ourselves. You can debate it all day long. That's the U.S. Constitution. It's not easily changed. Do some research and find out what it takes to change one of these amendments and constitutional protections. It's not going anywhere with a conversation. But what we can do is make them explain what happened. Hold those people, that person that opened up the door and left that door open for more than 5 minutes, that person should be charged and serve time, period. Peter Arredondo, who told his officers not to go in, he should have to serve time. They should. I know some of you are going to say, oh, you're being too harsh. It's just a teacher, just wanted a little fresh air. You are not understanding the landscape. Anybody in this chat that is a teacher, or you have connections to the school system, you know what the protocols are with those outside doors. It's a no. Teachers can't just come and go through any door they want to anymore. Those days are over. They're gone. It's a safety problem. The teacher that opened the door, propped it open, and left it open should be brought up on charges. That's it. And Peter Arredondo should be brought up on charges. Somebody's got to take responsibility for what happened so that maybe someone can answer something. And if I was in the FBI, I would have somebody on an airplane to Germany to talk to Cece and find out what that was about. They have badges to get into their building. Locked doors are there for a reason. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And how about the cops that were outside of the building that handcuffed parents? How about the cops, the parents that were terrified, frantic, saying, why are you going in? Why aren't you going in to help our kids? We can still hear the gun. He's still shooting. Someone has to do something. They began attacking those parents, telling them to shut up, quit yelling. If they try to go in the school, that they're going to tase them. What's been going on with Peter Arredondo and his police force? Who do these people think they are, and what do they think their job is? I'm telling you, somebody needs to hold them accountable, period. All of them, the whole police force there in Uvalde, whether they were outside arresting parents for being frightened or whether they were inside listening to children die, they all need to be held accountable. And I am a hold the blue line person. I am a Blue Lives Matter all the way. You guys that are a part of my channel, y'all are probably in shock that I'm this angry with the police. It's terrible. It was Shelock. there are videos that show the cops throwing parents to the dirt to put handcuffs on them because the parents are demanding that somebody go in and save those kids. You can hear one lady saying, "Are you going to go in? Why aren't you going into the effing school?" And then she says, "Well, if you're not going in, then I'll do it." And they got her. It's incredible. It's incredible. Fired and replaced. They failed the kids and the teachers and their parents. I agree, happy. I even made the comment that, I'm frankly completely surprised that any of them are even still on the police force. I don't know why they haven't resigned in shame. Imagine if that was you that followed orders. Children are getting shot and killed. You can hear it. You can hear them crying and screaming. You can hear the weapon. And you're standing there because some fat cat, Peter Arredondo, told you not to go into the room. I would be ashamed to show my face. I would not want to show my face. I would not want to be known. I would walk away. I would resign my position and find some, little piece of the woods to hide in for the rest of my life. I can't even believe they're still on the force. I can't even believe they're still employed. I wonder the shooter's parents will go to jail, some kind of charges because they failed the boy. At Mama Mo, they're trying to do that with the Crumblies, right? This one, the mother is saying, "Oh, please forgive him. He had his reasons." Can you believe that? Why are we arresting her? Why hasn't she been arrested? Where did your kid get the money to buy 2 AR-15s and more than 500 rounds of ammunition? Where? Forgive him? I'm sorry, but you know what you can do with your reasons. Of course, he's 18. That's right, Kathy. So it's technically outside of her hands. Yeah. It's being said in San Antonio, police are moving to other cities. Good. We have had non-custodial parents call and we go into lockdown. There were shots fired across the street and yet nothing was done. A lot of people, Shelock, a lot of people don't know that there were minutes where he was shooting at the funeral home. There was, before he ever got into the school, there should have been a police response. It just doesn't make sense. The whole thing is crazy. Well, Anna, you've also got to remember that people have access to evil trucks and cars too, because there's a lot of people that get run over by somebody going crazy and driving through a parade, or like in New York, the guy that got in the truck and drove down the hiking path and killed a bunch of people. So how about in Germany, where the guys got the 18-wheeler and went through the parade, killing dozens and dozens of people. So this conversation is not about the evil guns. This conversation is about the failure to respond. This is a conversation about the mental illness. This is a conversation about red flags and nobody responding to red flags. This is about politicians that tell their police force not to do their job. That's what this is about. It's not about guns at all. It's about Peter Arredondo telling his police officers to let those children in room 111 and 112 die. It's not about guns. It's about the chief of police saying to the police officers, don't go in and save them. That's what it's about. But you know what? When the federal agents showed up, they got a key. They opened the door and went in and shot the guy. No more loss of life. Question is, why didn't they go into the room and kill the shooter an hour and a half before? It's not about guns. It's about the failure to respond. It's about people propping open doors so you don't have a secure campus. They said that it was the Border Patrol agent that shot him, and apparently he was trying to shoot the Border Patrol agent as he came through the door because he's got a bullet hole right through his cap. Just missed him that much, hitting his head. But that man went in and took him out. He was the first one through the door. Why did Peter Arredondo tell him to stand down? Why? Why was that door open and left open, not closed once the shooting started at the funeral home? Why weren't all of those police officers already on guard because there was a gunshot wound that was called from an old lady that was life flighted? It's not about guns. He was an off-duty Border Patrol officer. That's right. I know, Sherlock Holmes. It's terrible. It's the weight of it it's just too much. It's just too many mistakes, too many kids. It's too much. It's just so terrible, so awful. No, Braceland, you're not blocked. Hi, Peachy. Yes, I'm going to keep it up, Peachy. It's human nature you're fighting against. Why do people need AR-15s or any semi-automatic human hunting machines? We don't allow bombs. What use is it for others than mass human killing? Well, and I don't really have a position. People shoot skeet and they go hunting but I'm kind of like you, like all these, the handguns and some of it's more than what you would need for your sport, right? I know I'm with you on that, but let's also be very realistic that the people that are using these firearms to kill others are criminal or crazy. And just because we have laws that say you're not allowed to have a gun, the criminals will have their guns. Go to any country where guns have been outlawed, and you're just going to find out the only people that have the guns are the criminals. And that's the way it is. The grandest majority of people that own guns are not killing people. They're responsible gun owners. But that's neither here nor there in this situation. There's so much that went wrong in this situation. Somebody's got to complete an investigation instead of immediately jumping to the big political football. Those 22 people that died somebody has to understand why, where things went wrong, and how do you fix it so it doesn't happen again. There are so many parallels between what happened in Uvalde and what happened at Parkman. It's just shocking. It's shocking, the parallels, the things that went wrong. It's odd. Arredondo has a big head. I am Hispanic and let the Hispanics get power. They think they're gods and don't. Yeah, I said that wrong, Ursula. 19 children and 2 adults. Yeah. two teachers, so 21. The grandmother is still alive. She's in stable condition. Yeah, Kimberly, I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the guy's name. But there, yeah, he walked right up there and beheaded a guy. But you know what you don't ever hear about over here is in England they're having a lot of trouble with people getting stabbed, people getting their necks cut, beheadings. Crazy will find a way. You know, if there's a crazy person wants to inflict harm, it may come by way of a knife, a gun, a poison, um, a, a a truck, an 18-wheeler, a motorcycle. Crazy will find a way, sadly. Look at the red flags. Yeah, Allie, 100%. We need to address family dynamics, mental health, and get God back in people's lives. It's, you know, I think that's going to end up being when it all comes out about who this shooter was and everything. We've already learned that he's violent, he's aggressive, he had scars, self-inflicted scars. So all of that leads to, you know, a troubling situation at home. He probably didn't really have any conversation with anybody. He was probably an outcast. It was probably drugs and alcohol being used. There was probably abuse in his childhood. I mean, we can pretty well write a flow chart now how these things turn out. I just don't know why it automatically has to go to gun control when we gotta. You're right about the gun control. I'm not saying that you're not right. I think it's incredible that you've got this kid who is known to people for his mood problems and his violence, and he turns 18. And remember, y'all, and Herlock Holmes probably knows this. A year or two ago, there were two teenagers that were arrested in Uvalde who were planning a mass casualty event. So it's possible that he was part of that group and he already had this in his head. I don't know if Herlock is still here. Are you still in the channel, Herlock? So you've already got a police force that arrested two teens with this mass casualty ideation. And then you've got this kid who turns 18. He's troubled. He's known. He's 18 years old. He immediately comes up with how much money? Over $1,000 to go in and purchase an AR-15 and 500 rounds of ammunition, or 375 rounds of ammunition the first go around. And then he comes home, and 3 days later, he's back buying another weapon, another AR-15 and more ammunition. You don't think that those people didn't go, this is kind of strange. Wonder what's going on here. Wonder what this is about. Why didn't that trigger an automatic phone call to the FBI? There is some legislation. What? I can't hear you. A straw buyer? What's a straw buyer? Like he's buying for somebody else? So my husband said that when he went in 3 days later to purchase the second AR-15, that should have triggered an automatic flag for the feds, for the FBI, as a straw buyer. would they have let him buy the gun, or would they have stopped the sale? ATF. So the ATF would have been notified when he came in to buy the second AR-15 within 3 days. The ATF was notified, just as a trigger in the system, not because somebody picked up a phone. And then he would have been contacted and asked, "Are you buying this weapon for another person?" Because he bought like duplicate guns. So there's something for us to look for and ask about and demand an answer to. Cinnamon Hot says, I agree. The 4473 National Firearms application should have been flagged by ATF. Yep, absolutely, Cinnamon. That's what Bill was just talking about. Hey, Voice for the Voice. Let's welcome. Good to see you. Hit so many questions. So much went wrong in this little town. So many things. And again, I would have the teacher who propped open the door, and I would have Peter Arredondo in the jail until somebody gave me some answers that I could deal with. I'm sorry. I know it sounds cold and harsh, but we can't do anything about real regulations that have substance until we really understand what is it that's happening on the ground. How did they manage to pull this off? How did this 18-year-old, not a very sophisticated person at all, just walk into a school through an open door? Just walked in, went 20 feet, turned right, went 20 feet, turned left, and he was in the school where he proceeded to murder 19 children and 2 teachers. How? Just terrible. And who were the 4 people online that he was having conversations with? Who the hell is CC in Germany? Where did his money come from to purchase these things? Those are the questions we have to ask. Don't let them distract you with all of this fake, we got to have new gun law. They're not going to give you new gun laws. Both sides, this is just their way of getting elected and getting campaign donations and getting people fighting. But making them answer real questions about what happened. And here's a big one. Why in the hell did your officers, who couldn't go into the classroom to save children, but they could roll around in the dirt with the parents and put handcuffs on them and threaten them with tasers? There's just some important questions. There's some questions. It's when I think about those poor parents and what they experienced, that the children, it's a nightmare. Those parents are a nightmare too. To know, to be there and hearing those guns and not being able to get to your kid and watching those officers that had Kevlar vests on. And they're trying to put handcuffs on us as parents. There's you a fight that matters. Man, I'm horrified by all that took place. Yeah, Mama Mo, and there's a lot of people that really advocate for that, and I can tell you too. In the last 10 years, the price on ammunition has just skyrocketed, to the point that it's a big investment, to buy the ammo. So again, you got to ask yourself, where did this kid come up with the money to buy 2 AR-15s, more than 500 rounds. Where'd the money come from? Where'd it come from? Exactly, Liz. And so Liz says one of the parents went around the school and went in through a window. Exactly. And so the question I have is, why didn't those SWAT team members, why didn't the police officers, why didn't they go around to the back and just shoot the guy through the window? You don't even have to crawl in. She was a parent that didn't have a firearm or a Kevlar vest. You're going to tell me that out of all those cops that are there, that not a single one of them said, hey, I think I'll go around the back and shoot this SOB through the window? I would much rather my child get cut by broken glass than to have to be there watching that unfold before finally themselves being, telling y'all, Peter Arredondo is the man of the hour. Peter Arredondo is the man of the hour. Ursula thinks maybe his mother gave him the money. We don't know, Carly. We just don't. We don't know. We don't. It's too many things we don't know. It's a horrible situation. I wouldn't say the 22 is the most deadly gun, is it? Lots of people survive a 22. It's a tiny bullet. It's oh, it's terrible, Diamond Paw. It's just terrible. Don't know, Bebop. I'm on the one hand, I think, they're trying to protect the kids that survived, that were in the actual room. I think they're trying to give them their anonymity, which is they should. But again, what I was saying, the parents that were on the outside and the cops were roughing them up, every one of them should sue the police. They should sue them. I don't care who they were. They should be sued. We don't, Salty, we don't really technically know her condition. She was shot in the face. She survived. She's currently in stable condition. But I mean, she could have a serious traumatic brain injury. She may not have self-awareness. She may have had her memory wiped out. She may be unable to communicate for various reasons. So even though she survived, we don't really know how that went. And with a gunshot wound like that, brain swelling, if the area encased in the brain, if it was not violated, then you could still have, some different. The danger would be if there was a concussive type of impact on the brain that would then prompt the body to try to repair it, and so there would be a lot of fluid that would gather, and when it begins swelling, then it can really damage the brain even more, even as much as like 10 days after the trauma. So even though she's stable and she's alive. We don't really know what the condition that she's in. Yeah, the whole thing is just devastating, River Queen. It's too hard to understand. Yeah, just it's just so wide reaching and crazy. So, but again, I think every one of those police officers should be boom, 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 out the window, brought up on charges. Peter Arredondo should be arrested right now today. The school teacher should, at the very least, should face some sort of charges for, opening that door up and having it open like that. There should be something, some kind of charges to people have got to, we just got to start holding people accountable, whether they meant to do it or not. There's got to be something there that makes people stop and think, about what they're doing. And Buffalo, that's right. Happy. Yeah. No, midterm elections. No, I don't. Is someone talking about I'm not talking about elections. Something always happens when it's election time. Oh, because of the connection, because of the timing, maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not that cynical. Not that cynical, but I certainly think that it is interesting and it should be followed up on that Peter Arredondo 3 weeks ago was elected to the city council. And now he's telling his officers to stand down, threatening parents. What the hell were they being trained? What was the police? What was the police force doing in Uvalde? That is a big one. Stay alert. High Railroad. Stay alert for the story on the retired FBI agent in contact with the Buffalo shooter. I've never seen a teacher that would even go out one of those side doors because it's drilled into your head. Do not do it. You'll instantly, lose your job. It's dangerous. Can't do that. And what is the first thing you're supposed to do, Diamond Paw? If there is a person on campus, lock the door, turn the lights out, and move all the kids into a corner of the room that nobody can see through a window, right? Oh, but we're just going to leave the main door open to the outside. We're just going to leave that standing wide open. That's stupid. 27 school shootings in 2022 right now. God almighty. In 5 months. Jesus. Wow. Okay, everybody. So thank y'all for being here. I apologize. I'm on a rant. I am horrified and indignant about some really fishy, crazy things that happened. Those kids, it shouldn't have happened. The number of as long as it took the cops to respond, the stand down, attacking the teachers. I don't understand it. And I think we should really hit them hard and demand that they give us some answers. All right. You guys have a good afternoon. I had originally intended to do a analysis of Amber Heard on direct testimony. I'm going to take about an hour or so, maybe. Well, let me just say this. I'm going to take some time, and if I feel better, I'll come back and do the Amber Heard video, but I'm not sure that I will. So I'm pretty disheartened about this whole, shooting shooter thing and some, stuff. So, all right. And then Barry Morphew, he had a hearing, so I was going to talk about that a little bit, but I'll do it later on. Right now, I just kind of want to get a break from this and get my head reoriented. And then if I feel like coming back and kind of having some fun, I will, but I'm not sure that I feel like having fun. So, all right. And Duty Ron did a live earlier. It was really great. So if you haven't seen it, you could probably go over there and watch his live because it was good. So, all right. Don't watch too much of this coverage. It can be really disheartening. So kind of keep your own mental health safe and don't get immersed in this. Find some fun things to get your mind off of it every now and then. It can be terrible. Really, it's about as bad of a situation as one could imagine. It's terrible. So, all right, y'all have a good afternoon. And I'm going to try to come back, but I can't promise because I'm pretty bummed out right now. So we'll see you later. Bye.